The largest charities in the world right now are banks. Essentially, there's something called a donor advised fund where you can, instead of giving to a charity now, you can give to, let's say you want to give the Red Cross. Instead of giving the Red Cross now, you put it to Fidelity Charitable, which has its own 501c3. You get your tax deduction. You can invest that money and put it in the stock market. It grows. It grows tax-free. And then you go into Fidelity, go on their online portal, and then give to the Red Cross or give to every charity you want, which theoretically is amazing because you're going to give more over time and you're going to do this. But the byproduct of this is that we have a society where the largest, if you Google right now, the largest charities in the world, you're going to get 4 or 5 banks. And I'm curious for both of you, how that impacts like the donors or the field you work in.
Well, I think that philanthropy in general, at least my experience, has been very risk averse. And look, it makes sense if you're, driven by being risk averse because you want to, make sure that you're advising someone, right, to make a good donation. Then if you're playing it safe, it's really, really hard to get investments into innovative solutions. So, when it's driven by, again, being risk averse and a culture that is focused on less on innovative solutions, more on like, how can I make my clients happy? Then it's hard. It's just hard to invest in innovative things.
I mean, if you look at how a lot of philanthropy dollars are even invested, that follows Amanda's comment about how just their philanthropy traditionally has been very conservative. I'd like to believe that has shifted some and will continue to shift more. I think the bulk is still pretty traditional, which means pretty conservative. And I think as more and more folks, particularly times like now, really I'd like to think are starting or should be thinking more of, well, gosh, is our giving, can this be the seed corn for future change? Can we put something in now? Can we take a big bet, a big risk here? And really, there's an organization that I like, that I know, that we've vetted, that we've treated as, we have an R&D budget for our giving. So we are going to do some evaluation. We're going to work closely with them, and let's take a big bet on this. For folks who invested in Zoom or Bitcoin or Tesla, let's find an organization that does great work, and let's take great risk. And maybe this company Cause for Change will have a similar rate of return of 300, 400, 500%, but there's a component of risk. And I think that more folks are maybe seeing that as we are in, where we are now with COVID-19. And hopefully we see more change there. I'm hopeful, we're cautiously optimistic. There are folks that are making big bets on amazing ideas.
It's so funny because the space I was in the philanthropy side, there's always so much hope. And then when I was in the politics, Fourth Industrial Revolution side, it was so much despair. But I love it. And I think, so one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about in the philanthropic space is risk, because people take plenty of risk with their for-profit dollars all day long. That's like what the stock market is. Yet when it comes to charity, we're like, hey, we don't know if that's going to work. Or it's like, hey, I can't have any negative PR in my giving. Or, hey, like whatever the excuse is. And the problem is the way this is set up, that the people who need to take risk are wealthy people who can give back. It's like the individual donors, because governments can't take risk because then elected officials get crushed. Businesses can't take that risk on philanthropic stuff because they have to hit their bottom line. They're already taking enough risk otherwise. So it literally is on families to fail and try, if you have 100,000, for wealthiest folks to put that. And that's where I think a lot of innovation needs to come from. Amanda, I'm curious, tell us more. We've kind of skipped over, and it's like, maybe I buried the lead a bit. So tell us more about some of the amazing stuff you're doing. And I'll give the context of how we got connected is not just through Bill, but you were connected with Evelyn with a lot of your work on the Survivors' Bill of Rights, which I can't tell you how amazing it is, because it's one thing to feel good and talk a good game and say the right things. That is important. Words matter. But so do action. So for you to take something that a lot of people are very passionate about and turn into legitimate policy, frankly, bipartisan policy in certain places, game changing and rare. I'm sorry, I'm fanboying, but tell me more, please.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, because I think that, look, the field of nonprofit industry, of activism in general, of course, there are these thought leaders, right, who are very important. Yes, raising awareness, very, very important. How do we translate these ideas into action? And in order to do so, how do we do it in a way where we don't step on landmines that actually hold us back? Right? There is certainly, especially when you engage in legal change, right? Like writing legislation, you have to work with people. And let me just tell you, first of all, I'm a super nerd, so my background's in astrophysics. That really informs how I operate. And also with this idea of this being larger than myself, right? And having a very clear finish line. So what do I mean by that? When you are able to have a very clear goal, everything else kind of just falls to the wayside, right? So if the goal is to pass these civil rights, then there is actually a simple track to that. It's you must work in a bipartisan manner, you must get X amount of votes, right? Yes, of course, it's much harder than what I'm saying, but I've done it 33 times now. All of my laws have been bipartisan, and it literally makes RISE the most successful legislative reform vehicle in modern U.S. history.
That's so impressive and so sad in some
It
ways
is so
too.
sad.
Right?
Actually, literally, there was this. I often don't bring up this data point because people have feelings about it. But if you look at the presidential candidates that ran, most of them have passed 0 laws. That's average. Zero laws. I've passed 33. And the reason for that is, well, we are centered on community. We're centered on people. And we also think strategically about how to advance these rights and how to work across the aisle. It's so sad to say that being able to exercise radical empathy and then marry that with data-driven processes is innovative, but honestly, very, very few people are doing it. Well, literally no one has a track record. So there's that. But it's important to have a plan, and that plan being driven by what it is that the change that you're trying to make.
I know that feeling where it's, I had it with Suit Up, a nonprofit I started, which was small scale, but I had it a lot with Andrew, where it's like, where you're doing something and you have a right message and it seems very, very rational to you. It's like, and you're like, am I doing something wrong? Because this seems really, really obvious and no one's saying no to me. And sometimes the reality is the only way something's going to happen, the only reason it didn't happen yet is because no one bothered to get up and do the work.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Tell us more, man, about the work.
Think as if you're in like a movie about a heist, right? Like Ocean's 11 or something. What's the first process to get like the thing, right? If you're like diamond instead of a diamond is civil rights. You must analyze your landscape. You must know what the exit points are. You must know what the rules are. If you want to win a game, you have to know the rules. And then you have to know it well enough to know how to break the rules, right? So it's so important to be educated about the processes by which, I'm going to just talk about the type of change that RISE engages in, which is creating laws, right? And centering it around the communities that are affected by it, putting them at the center. So I can't believe, that's innovative, but it really is, because so much of what people feel, especially, reiterating the last presidential race is, hey, I don't feel like I have agency, right? Like, my family's going through all of these issues, but who's looking out for us? And also, why does my voice matter, right? I think that was said in so many different ways. And that's a real problem. If we live in a democracy that's of the people, by the people, for the people, then the people need to feel like they have a part of this country that's working and serving them, right? So why does that happen? It's happened because there has been a considerable effort to, I know this sounds spicy, gaslight people into forgetting their constitutional right to petition the government. What do I mean by that? Our education. Most people don't know that they could write their own law. Most people don't know how a bill becomes a law, right? And all of these fundamental things are so, so important. So that's what RISE Justice Labs does. We have a program called School of Hope, and it literally teaches people the blueprint for how to pass laws.
You are tying all this passion and frankly rhetoric and a lot of things the left is good at. We are very good at drawing a line in the sand. We are very good at saying you're on my team or not the team, right? But we are not good as Democrats, excluding the past, literally just the presidential election in 2020. We're not good at winning. We're not good at executing. And like generally speaking, I'm obviously overgeneralizing. And there's a lot of things you can say about Mitch McConnell, and I have a lot of thoughts on that man. But one thing he's very good at, sadly, is winning.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He gets a lot. If you look at this man's track record in terms of Supreme Court justices and impeachment trials, won, if you go down the list, he wins all the time. And Democrats need to start winning because we have the right ideas. We just don't have the right game plan. One of the reasons I think you're the future of philanthropy because you've taken all the rhetoric and all the passion and turned it into not just activism, but organized activism where you can rally the troops around a cause. How has that worked for you guys? And what sort of stuff have you actually done what have you done to help that work?
So activism to me is like straight up voltage, right? And organizing is directed energy. And what we do is directed energy. Of course, both are necessary in building movements and creating change. And each person has their part to play in a social movement. We need the people who are protesting. We need the thought leaders. We need the people who are with the megaphones. And we also need people who know the rules, right? Who knows what unanimous consent is and what redlining means. All of these things that are so important to the actual technicality of moving something through the existing body that we have, right? So in order for us to actually create the change that we want to see, one, it's so basic, but know what it is that you want and be informed about what it is that you want. So our first lesson, right, in RISE, when you're accepted into the program, is to do immense research, right? It's before you ever step into the office of a senator, have your bill draft ready, right? How are they supposed to know more than you? I mean, yeah, I get it. It's their job to, make the policy. But also, if you want to increase your chances of success, then tell them what it is that you want. Tell them why it is it's bad that they won't do this. And also help them see your perspective, right? So that means analyzing your issue and knowing your thing before you go in. That's really critical. Hopeonomics is actually, again, I'm a nerd, so it really comes back from a nerdy place. Star Trek people will know this, but for me, the way that I teach people hopeonomics is to envision a 4-layered chessboard. It's literally 4 layers, all stacked on each other. It's a game of chess, and each layer represents a mode of thinking. And when you move a chess piece on any of these layers, it affects the rest of the game, right? So the first layer, it goes from most concrete to most abstract. The first layer is mission and facts, what I just said. Know your issue. The second layer is narrative, right? How are you going to have that emotion towards that? The third layer is coalition building, which is how do you work across the aisle, right? And the last layer is what I like to call the human condition. And honestly, I actually, modeled this off of Graham Allison's theory of how to deal with dictators in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But, instead of dictators, it's for politicians. It's not, what to think, but how to think. How do you strategize, right? And get to your finish line.
I'll tell you this, from Humanity Forward, where Andrew and I were running an organization that was trying to get cash relief passed, we did a lot of programs. We did a lot of testing. We did all this stuff. And like the best ROI, it wasn't even close, was we hired someone who had like very little experience doing this just to go harass our congressmen and women. And that actually got the stimulus check passed. That's literally what worked. Yes, completely agree. It's like, and that's a big thing, Andrew, like trying to make the like plumbing cool, which I think you're doing really well. Bill, have you seen it? Are any other organizations like trying this? Like, or is this so out of left field in the philanthropic game that we need to spread the word high and wide for people to start keeping up with Amanda? Like, what are you seeing there?
I've not seen anyone do it to the level of what Amanda and Rise are doing at all. I mean, a lot of folks, you have the image of Schoolhouse Rock, and you got the sad Bill at the top of the hill, but who actually, to your point, Zach, who actually is doing that? I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, And there are a ton of lawyers and a ton of lobbyists as the state capitol. And, of course, how is law passed? Well, there's lobbyists involved, and they talk to the staff, the local representatives, the Senate. I mean, it goes through the process. That's it. I mean, a lot of folks don't really know, and this sounds so trite, but I can't think of another phrase, but what Amanda and her team are doing, they're really democratizing democracy. It's making it so real, and they're helping you do it, and they are helping you along the way. You have to do the work, but they're there to really help shape you do that. So Zach, I'm sure there are, and Amanda, I'm sure, has additional insight into this, but this model, I think, is incredibly successful. It's not just which it's there's proof and concept, building on Amanda and the work that she's done to right so many wrongs, and then other folks have their own passion interest area too, whether they live in Tallahassee or Two Egg, Florida, or wherever they live. They can make this change and they can make it happen. And being able to have that structure where it's just not this kind of amorphous piece, it really is, I truly believe this, you really are democratizing democracy. And that's how you make real change.